Greetings all, Shane Bruce, Restomod Daisy, and today we're going to be taking apart a new addition to our little herd of used guns here. A customer sent this in for repair. It's a Daisy, number 102, model 36, and when it got here it wouldn't cock. Well, we did a real quick preemptive diagnosis and discovered that the original lever, this is the original lever, had worn the nose off. If you'll notice that right there, that's actually worn down quite a bit. So we replaced it with a current production plastic lever, and here I'll let you see the difference in the amount of material at the nose. Yeah, that little 1/4 inch counts. If you don't have that, if you've lost that much of the nose of the lever, it won't push the plunger assembly far enough back to engage with the sear, and the gun won't fire. So we did fix the non-firing aspect, and it's running at about 200 feet a second. So we're going to take it apart and see what's going on the inside. Before we do that, though, let's take a little tour down the gun. As you can see, its surface is okay. It's got some paint issues, but most of the paint is still there. I mean, this is an 80% gun. There's a imagery for the roll stamp. You can see it says Daisy in the old style script, which is kind of cool. But it is a Rogers gun, so it was produced after 1958. It's not a Plymouth, Michigan gun. It has a register number. The original stock, this 102 was a boy's rifle, so it never had a forearm. It wasn't something that Daisy did on the boys' guns of the era. And it has a much shorter shot tube than a Red Ryder or Model 94, guns of the same era, because this is a boy's rifle. Let's move on down to the buttstock. Now, the owner had this gun since he was a youth, so I'm assuming he is the fellow that infilled the raised checkering on the wrist of the stock. It's not a bad job. I mean, it's painted in, but he kept inside the lines, so, he gets an A for that. Did the same thing here on this side, and once again, it looks pretty good. And the buttstock has some issues. He did the same basic treatment, but there's been some paint flaking, and a repair has been done here. I believe this was cracked at one time, and what we see here is the remnant of the glue. Whoa, not anymore. The remnant of the glue that was holding the patch in place. That's what it appears to be to me. Anyway, so that's a physical review of the gun. Let's go ahead and take her apart. Step one, as always, is pull the lever out. We'll just remove that screw. Now, on an older gun like this, you'll encounter slotted screws instead of Phillips screws, so it requires a bit of care to take it apart and not mess anything up. It's missing the top stock screw. That's not unusual on these plastic stock guns because normally that plastic gives it up over time and breaks and chips the plastic out of the way and then falls out of the stock. Not an unusual item at all. We'll pull the stock bolt out and slide the stock out. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Still got the trigger return spring, and there's no obvious cracking here. This is a good place to take a look and see the color play you can get with these plastic stocks, and that's why Daisy went with them, because you could in the injection process create the illusion of grain and figure that wood has, but do it with a cheap plastic injection molded stock. And this one does have the internal slide lever, so it doesn't slip through the wrist as we've seen on another gun that we've had recently. That is the plastic factory lever I put in to determine if it would work or not. Let's see, so now we're going to take the trigger bolt out. And once we do that, we're going to go over to the vise and extract the spring stop and pull the plunger assembly and see what that looks like. Pull this little rascal out of here. That's a pretty good nick. You can see it was a plated trigger originally, but youth and wear and sweat have had their effects on that surface coating. So now it's a rusted through area, a little bit rough. All right, off to the bench. I'm going to open her up, get the gun in position, and pull the plunger assembly out so we can take a look at the mainspring. It will cycle, but it's a little creaky in the cocking cycle. A couple of bumps that I would say are not standard. I'll hold it. Let me invert that. There we go. And I think that there might be some issues with the mainspring. We can take a look here at the bottom of the receiver assembly. You can see that that has been split and warped over time. I'm not quite sure what we can do to improve that, aside from pulling that pin and sticking a bolt in there. All right, the first step is going to be to take the old mainspring compressor and run her in if we got the right size. There we go. Now, on the buck and the boys' rifles, the rear sight is the spring stop. It's kind of like a dual purpose kind of thing that Daisy figured out. You know, why have two pieces? Like Elon Musk says, the best part is no part. So why have a spring stop and a rear sight when you can just have a spring stop and a rear sight? So the rear sight's out. No surprises there. Now we will extract the extract our plunger assembly. If I can find a screwdriver. There we are. And see what that puppy looks like. Oh, now here's something interesting. Take a look on the inside of this. Can you see those little round circles? Yeah, right there. This receiver cover was also used for what was called the space gun. And you'll notice there's a series of round dots. Get around on this side where the light's a little better.
We can see them.
Okay. And in the Space Command gun, the outer receiver steel was cut to see those holes, so that the Space Command gun had this pattern of holes that was you could actually see through the outside. Kind of cool. That's the first one of these I've seen where the holes are on the inside, but the holes aren't on the outside. Probably some parts issues in the parts bin when this was fabbed up. I'll have to check another one or two and see if that's a common thing or not, but I don't think it is. All right, let's get our mainspring assembly out. All right, so what we're looking at here is a standard Daisy plunger. It's got the square back plate. It has a composite seal, so that's good. That's good news for me because it's in pretty rough shape and I wanted to replace it. Let's check the diameter on that, make sure that that is a Model 25 seal set. Yeah, there we go. It should be the small seal set. It is. So our proposed replacement seals will pop right in. Shouldn't have a problem with that. It was 88. Maybe not. That might be a Red Ryder seal. Because this is 80. So the small seal set won't work. I do have some compression cups for this, but I don't have a abutment seal. Oh, that's a pretty stout spring, so we're going to have to break out the spring compressor to get that extracted. And then we'll get that mainspring dismounted, because I'm thinking it's kind of crackety, a little sacked. So, like I've shown you on so many other videos, you can extract a spring compressor manually, or compress a mainspring manually, but it's kind of tough on the old hands. Take yourself down to the big box store and get yourself a caulk gun, and then you can fab up a mainspring compressor easily, and it makes this job so much simpler. So we'll pull the original plunger assembly out, or the original compression cup and air tube out. Then we'll release the pressure on the mainspring and extract it from the plunger and see if she rolls. Yeah, it's a little sacked, not too bad, but a little sacked. But the gun's only running about 204 feet a second right now. So what I want to do is clean this up a touch, and then we'll reinstall a Cobalt 327 mainspring and an appropriate size compression cup, put it back in the gun, see how she runs, see if it runs better or if it runs about the same. And then we'll do some exploration down there in the compression cylinder, get that cleaned up and polished out, and determine whether or not we think that the abutment seal is good enough to leave in place. If it's synthetic, it probably is. When you peer down the core of the receiver, you'll see a small hole there, hopefully. There we go. And that hole diameter looks about appropriate and about good. If it is, we'll leave that in and replace it with a Red Ryder compression cup, and then run on and do the first of the series of ballistic tests we'll do with different springs: a Cobalt 327 spring, a Red Ryder standard spring, and a 499 spring. And record that data and provide it to the customer and see if he wants to go to a much stiffer spring, which will require more effort to cock, replace the factory spring with a Red Ryder equivalent spring, or go to a light spring, depending on what the use pattern for the gun will be. I mean, it's a boy's rifle. If it's going to be used by a 7, 8-year-old kid, you don't want as much juice on the spring so that the gun will cycle easier and he can concentrate on shooting as opposed to just trying to get the gun cocked. Well, that's where we're at today on the 102 Model 36. We'll have a follow-up video for you detailing the results from the experiments we'll conduct over the next few hours. And then we'll contact the customer and find out exactly what he wants to do next. That's all we've got for you today, kids. This is Shane Bruce with Restomod Daisy, signing off.